Hello everyone and welcome back. So it's been about a year I've had a van now, and one thing I've always struggled with is its power. So today I have took the plunge and I'm going to be installing some solar panels and a 100 amp hour leisure battery to the van, and we're going to see if we can get it all working. So the first problem I've already encountered is the roof isn't perfectly level, because I was just going to screw straight into the loops there, which are like the mountings for the roof bars. So I've had to make these aluminium brackets, which I'm going to hopefully screw into the roof bar mountings. That will then give me the height I need to mount the solar panels on top of the roof and clear the central arch. The idea is there anyway. I've got two panels to be putting on the roof. I'm going to be mounting them longitudinally, so lengthways, and then we're going to have to stack them in front of one another widthways. There's the other bracket which I've made for the other side. I'm going to need to do something about the awning rail, which I put on not too long back ago, so I'm going to have to take it off this side, and then I'm going to have to probably mount the solar panel brackets and then remount that on top of the solar panel brackets, but I'll get round to that bit once everything's all put together, and I'll see how I can actually remount that, but there will be a way, I'm sure. So I'm currently waiting on the Amazon man for some spire clips or chimney nuts, whatever you want to call them, to go underneath these raised up parts, because I'm not paying Peugeot prices for them. I'm just going to put an M6 nut through them, which will allow me to properly bolt these down. Once I've got them properly bolted down on both sides, I'm going to need to measure the gap between this rail and the next rail. That'll give me my width I'm working with, and then I need to start cutting some more angled aluminium to that width. I'm just hoping that this is going to give me enough height, but failing that, I can drill that a little bit higher. There's all quite a lot of guesswork involved with this, but I'm doing it purely so it's completely removable, and I don't want to drill into the van in any way, shape or form. So if anything does happen to the van, because it is an older van at the end of the day, I can take all the setup off it, and then I can just move it on to a newer van or another van if anything does ever happen to it. So nothing's going to be permanently fixed in here, just like nothing ever is permanently fixed in here when I made it. So again, in an effort to make this system as completely removable without trace as possible, there's a body bung which lives just up here. So I'm going to drill through that to run the solar PV cabling. So that's the cables drilled through that little grommet. Whilst the Amazon man's still coming to me, and I might as well get on with some other jobs, I'm going to run these cables through the van and try and mount the solar charge control unit somewhere. So that's all run through, and it comes straight out in the roof up there. I'm hoping I can run it along this bit of a gap there, because I'm going to try and mount the panel in that general area, because all my electrics are always over here, my telly's there, so I'm going to try and keep the electric area down there. Right, so whilst waiting for the Amazonian man, I've run the cabling across the top, along the side there, and then down. I've mounted the battery box underneath the TV where my previous power station was, because all my electrics terminate at that point, so it's been nice and easy to move it all over. I'm going to mount the solar charge control unit on the back of the box in another effort of keeping this as removable as possible. The Amazonian man has now arrived as well, so all the chimney nuts are fitted down the side here, and I've put my first nut and bolt in. So I just need to do the same all the way down that length, and then repeat the same on that side. So that's both of the lengthways rail mounted, and amazingly they all lined up. So I'm going to go and buy a lottery ticket, because that's the first time I've ever made anything and everything's lined up first time. I think that's hopefully going to give me enough height to keep the panels off the roof as well. Now, when I measured it roughly previously, it's about 110 mil, 110 centimeters, not mil, between the two rails I've made, and the bars are 250 centimeters, and I've cut these to 140, so that should leave 110 as an offcut. So if that 110 as an offcut fits perfectly, I'm going to be buying 2 lottery tickets. So I'm going to nip indoors and go and get that offcut, and if that fits, I'm going to be amazed. Well, it looks like I'm buying a lottery ticket tonight. I wonder if it's the same distance front and back, or if it widens at the front. It's wider at the front, so hopefully I've got enough offcuts to do at least a panel. I can put a panel on the roof, and then I'll have to remeasure the distances and then chop up my final piece of angled aluminium, and I can make it fit the front panel. First panel just mocked up into place. I'm pretty damn happy with that. Because it gets wider towards the front, I'm having to do a little bit of adaptations. So the very front and very last cross piece, so this piece and the one at the very front, that's going to be full length, just as this one is. The middle pieces I'm doing as like a quarter support. So I'm cutting this angled aluminium section off to about here, 2 screws in the bottom of it, and then 1 for the end. And I think because it's in the middle, it's just going to be enough support for what it needs. And that already, without even screwing it down, is very strong. So I'm really quite happy with that. Let's make the second panel. Just got to do some measuring for the front to make sure I cut it at the right lengths, and then we'll go from there. So that's both panels loosely fitted onto the roof. I've drilled my first hole in this corner, which I've just put a nut and a bolt in. So I've just got to repeat that 8 more times. That's all the panels bolted onto the roof. And I'm now just working out what I can do with my awning rail, because I want to keep that bit. I've also just mounted the charge controller to the side of the battery box. Batteries there ready to go into the box. So I've just done a quick mock-up. Ignore the bird's nest of wiring down here, I'll tidy that up at a later point. Just wanted to make sure that it is actually charging. And there we go, look, so it's going in there, it's charging. Battery's at 13.1 volts. It's charging at 1 amp. And 0.1 amp going to a drawer, so that's probably just running this this charge control unit. Nice! I'm well happy with that. So that's going to keep me powered up nicely on the road. It's a very simple, quick test. I've got the cool box plugged into the power bank, which is going. The other thing I struggle with in the van during the winter months is heat. So I've made this little sort of brackety box thing for a diesel heater, which is inside there. It is a second-hand diesel heater, so I've been assured that it does work, and I did buy it from a friend of mine, so I've full faith in it. But I'm just going to do a dummy run outside of the van just to make sure everything works and everything first, before committing to drilling holes in the floor for the exhaust port. Getting warm air now. So whilst the diesel heater is just doing its test, the sun's come out nicely now, and it's putting a lot more into the batteries. Look, .3 amps. So that's quieting down on the fuel pump and it's chucking out a load of heat now. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for that to cool down, and then I'm going to start considering mounting that in the back here. But I'll also need to wire up my inverter as well, which I've got a 600 watt inverter. So I think whilst that's cooling, I'll do some measuring as to where I need to drill my hole for the exhaust port, and then maybe put my inverter in as well. So that's the inverter leads on. Little 600 watt inverter. I don't use a huge amount of power myself, but this would be absolutely fine for running my electric blanket and a small little travel kettle, just so I don't have to boil water on the hob. I'm going to decide where to mount that. I'm either going to be up there, I might actually put it down beneath the battery box, I think. So that makes sense, doesn't it? So the wires are on the inverter, and the inverter is now mounted underneath the main battery box, which I've got on at the moment. It says up 13.9 volts. All sits nicely underneath the telly. So again, the whole idea of this is to try and make everything removable. Should anything ever happen to the van, I can take it all out and it can go in a future project. Hopefully nothing happens to it, but you never know. It's coming up to 20 years old anyway, this van, so just mounted the fuse next to the battery box there, so it's nice and accessible. So I've got the telly going now. Why not watch some telly whilst I'm working in it? Anyway, what I'm using are what's called Anderson sockets, or a high current connector. The battery box came with two on the top already, and they're just a universal connector which you can connect together and make circuits. So that's the inverter connected, just plugged in on the Anderson socket up there. I'm just going to have to tie those cables together, I think. So that's all ready for me to put some 3-pin household stuff into, so that'll be very handy to do in the future. I've committed myself. I've got a hole, so I've cut a bigger hole around the wood than the actual exhaust diameter. The exhaust diameter is pretty much just that, so that's going to be quite a tight fit. But I wanted to create an air gap between the exhaust and the wood, because obviously the exhaust is going to get hot. So for that should hopefully keep it a bit safer in here. I'm probably going to trim the carpet back a bit further as well, just because I feel the carpet is going to be the weak point here. So I'm going to take that back, probably square it off and just take it back a bit. And at the moment I'm just tightening up the band clamp onto the exhaust pipe here, and then I can pop it all into situ and then secure this to the actual van. But good thing about doing all of this, again, it's all completely reversible. There's my little disc I've cut out. I can soon glue that back together, pop that back in there, and I can always JB weld a little bit of van floor back as well. As I keep saying, this is all removable. And of course I've got the telly on watching Wheeler Dealers, because you've got to watch something whilst you're working, haven't you? Not the prettiest thing in the world, but it will sure as hell work. Right, let's go on a tour underneath the van, shall we? This footage is going to be terrible because I'm going to have very limited idea as to where the camera's pointing. So let's go under. There's my exhaust, which I don't know about you, I think that looks pretty damn cool. And underneath here, you can see up there's where it comes down from the inside of the van. It comes straight down round sort of about a 45-degree bend. Obviously good hose clamp on there, good hose clamp on here. Straight onto the exhaust muffler, to which I've put a self-drilling screw straight into the chassis rail, which on a little bracket like that, I think that's bloody awesome. I don't think that's going to go anywhere, do you? Not unless that rots out, but... So I've been lying under here for quite a while figuring out the best way of doing that. I think I've bossed it. So I've sent a wire for the control panel through a little grommet down there, which runs up this rear panel. And then I've just ran the wires through one of the vents, which clips on up there, again in an effort to try and make this removable as possible. That's the controller mounted. I've gone for there as it's nice and easy just to run the wire straight down to the heater itself. I could have gone over there so I could operate it in bed, but I'm not that lazy. I'm lazy, but I'm not that lazy. So let's have a little bit of a rundown as to what we've done today. We've put new leisure battery in with a battery box, solar charge controller, done all the wiring for it, the inverter's in, and up on the roof here we've got 240 watts of solar panels in a custom built mount. So that's the diesel heater all mounted. I put a little bracket down there which secures it, and a very rudimentary bracket on the bottom there as well. So all I've got to do is put a bit of tubing from there, just angle it, and then it will blow the heat into the van. It's been a busy day. Thank you very much for joining me. If you've got any questions about what I've done to the van, sure enough, drop them in the comments below. I will try and go through them all if you have got any questions. But thank you very much for watching. You take care of yourselves and I'll see you in the next one. Cheery, bye.